Alright, so it's time to eat, you bust out your phone, you use your glasses as stand because everybody does that for some reason, and you try to find an interesting video to watch. And well, you do find something that seems promising, you click on it, and at first everything seems normal, but then you quickly start realizing that something is very wrong with the video. Like, the voice of the narrator sounds a bit too robotic, and he seems to struggle with the most basic words. And also, the stock footage that's being used is super generic, and not just that, but it keeps repeating for some reason. And the actual script itself, like what the video is about, doesn't seem to really make sense. It's not getting anywhere. It's like the narrator is just yapping, starting and stopping, without reaching any meaningful conclusion. It's like no human thought was put behind this video. And that's because if this happened to you, you've most likely not watched something that was made by a human at all, but something that was made by a... So it is officially 2025, and I can confirm the sun was wrong. We women are not having more sex with robots than humans, and that's my roundabout way of saying that AGI is not here yet. All this AI slop that's appearing on every social media platform is not made by robots trying to steal our jobs. It's made by humans trying to make money using AI to launder other people's work. A new grift has appeared on the girlboss side and the alpha male side of the internet. Which side you're on depends on if you liked blue or pink when you were a kid. And this grift is called Faceless YouTube Channel, and that's a great name because if I made that I wouldn't want to show my face either. The idea is to leverage AI tools like ChatGPT to essentially outsource all of the necessary work to make a video to these tools, including voiceovers that they make with uncanny AI text-to-speech. And since no real work is actually being put in, this is, unfortunately, extremely effective. More and more often recently you see AI slop being based not on Wikipedia articles, not on forum posts, but on other YouTube videos. This is done by exploiting YouTube's automatic subtitles feature, scraping those subtitles and then giving them to ChatBBL, asking it to either change some words around in case you straight up want to steal a video one-to-one, or make a summary in case you want to make a short. Case of plagiarism, you can easily find countless YouTube creatives complaining about how their videos were stolen like this, and the phenomenon doesn't seem to be stopping at all. As H-Bomber Guy said in that video about that thing,
on YouTube, if you have an original idea, if it's good, it won't be yours for long.
Automatic subtitles are, in my opinion, one of the best things YouTube ever did. And even though that means AI grifters can now steal your videos easier, you shouldn't disable them. They are incredibly useful and some people need them in order to watch your content. Unfortunately, this incredible feature is being exploited by these AI grifters to steal videos, and we can't do anything about it. Like, just take the link of this video, okay, and put it on a video summarizer, like any summarizer of your choice. As you'll see, you're getting no summary for this video. A few months ago, I had an idea, and like the true scientist that I'm not, I wanted to put it to the test. And the idea was trying to use the subtitle track in my video to poison any AI summarizers that were trying to steal my content to make slop. The most basic way to do this would be simply removing your subtitle track and creating a fake one that is only meant to be seen by AI bots that basically only contains yapping, like pure garbage. However, this was unacceptable for me. Despite it working, I didn't want to do this because I really care about having proper, well-formatted subtitles in my videos. They are very important to me. So after some experimenting and iterating, I figured out a way to both have working subtitles for you guys, like in this video, but also in the subtitle data, hide garbage, like pure nonsense that is only visible to AI trying to steal my content. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how to do it. But first, this video might make me some enemies, so just to be safe, give me 1 minute to pay my bills. Just last year, several internet providers were victims of a massive security breach, where hackers are suspected to have gained access to a network infrastructure that ISPs use to answer court-authorized wiretapping requests, meaning that potentially your private data and everything you do on the internet might have been exposed to a third party. This is one of many leaks happening seemingly every week. And hackers are not the only problem. Data brokers can legally harvest and sell your personal data, letting anyone straight up buy it and use it for whatever they want. And that's why I partnered with today's sponsor, Aura. Aura monitors your personal data across both the clear and dark web, alerting you immediately in case of a breach and providing you with up to $5 million in insurance if that data is used to steal your identity. They also provide you with real-time alerts, even for breaches that do not directly involve you, an automatic opt-out from data brokers so your data doesn't get sold to anyone, and a VPN for safe browsing, potentially protecting you from attacks like the ISP one that I just mentioned. You can go to the link in my description, aura.com/fami, for a free 2-week trial, meaning you can straight up immediately check for free if your data was stolen or sold to anyone. Thanks to Aura for supporting this crazy video right here. And now, back to destroying Skynet, I guess. Around 1 year ago, one of my friends sent me a link to this website. I don't know who the Toolify AI is, but they just stole my video. They clearly just gave my video to a YouTube summarizer and published the summary as their own article on their website. Now, instead of like tweeting about it and just getting the content removed, I wanted to try doing something more interesting, and that is, what if I can make it so that someone trying to do the same thing with one of my videos in the future is going to waste their time and money because the subtitles are a lie? I mean, they're real, but there's something in them. After a bit of experimentation, I figured out a way that works with most LLMs. It doesn't work if someone is using Whisper AI, which is transcribing my video based on audio, and then they give that transcript to ChatGPT. But most people trying to steal stuff wouldn't bother with that. They're just going to Google Video Summarizer and use that to steal your stuff. And so, to start, we need to talk about
ass!
Advanced Subtitle Alpha is a subtitle format released in 2002, technically being the fourth version of the SSA subtitle format that was originally launched in 96, and it was originally created by Kotus, a British programmer and anime fansubber, as the file format used for his own fan-subbing software, Advanced Substation Alpha. Now, if we compare the S format with the SRT format, which is basically the standard when it comes to subtitles today, S clearly wins here. SRT was originally launched in 2000 as part of Subrip, which was a software that would use OCR to scan hard-coded subtitles from video and convert them to scripts. And because of this very narrow original scope, SRT files have a very simple structure. When you open one with Notepad, you notice that every subtitle is made of 3 parts: the sequence number, the timecode telling the player when the subtitle should appear and disappear, and finally the actual text itself, the thing you see on screen. This is very basic but also very clever, and it works, but it is no match for the S. S also gives you fonts, positioning, effects like shadow, bold, italic, underline, karaoke, animations, heck, you even get multi-line styling, so you could have different styles in the same subtitle line. S is how I managed to get color subtitles in my Format Wars video. However, that shouldn't have worked. YouTube allows you to upload subtitles in different formats, but S is not one of them. There are some other compatible subtitle formats that allow you to get different degrees of customization, but none of them gives you access to every single one of these features at the same time like S. However, after you upload your subtitles to YouTube, it doesn't matter what they were because they internally get converted to YouTube's own proprietary format named SRV3 or YouTube Time Text, YTT, which has already been reverse engineered, and you can find a few GitHub projects that let you convert your S files to YTT, and YouTube is going to accept those just fine. You can just upload them, and even though the styling doesn't show in the subtitle page, after you save the subtitles and you go to the actual video player, they work. So let's take one of my classic videos, okay, the Homebrew channel music one. I've already made subtitles for that video ages ago, and they were in the SRT format. When I convert them to the S format, what I get is this suite of options of like new stuff that I can do. And there are 2 things that I'm very interested in: subtitle position and styles. The way YouTube summarizers usually work is by scraping the subtitles from a YouTube video and then giving those to an LLM like ChatNES, asking it to make a summary. So the LLM then takes a look at the subtitle file in order and tries to explain what's going on inside. So what if, exploiting the S format, we add for every real subtitle line that a human is supposed to be able to read, 2 chunks of text out of bounds using the positioning feature of the S format, with their size and transparency set to 0, so they are completely invisible. And to avoid repetition, which is something that an LLM can easily figure out, like it can understand we are trying to trick it, instead of putting random words, we actually copy-paste works from the public domain, and for extra measure, we replaced most words there with synonyms. Now, doing this manually would be a pain in the ass, so I just made a Python script that does this for me, and it kinda works. It spits out an S file that I have to then open using Aegisub to then modify the styles to make sure that the ones out of bounds are also invisible and 0 pixels big. I can then finally use this other tool called YouTube Subconverter to convert the S file into a YTT and upload it to YouTube. And as you can see, the subtitle page is a fucking mess now, but when I actually reach the video page and I enable the subtitles, everything seems fine. Alright, so before we go any further, I want to go here and remove... Okay, there is no automatic captions track yet, so I should just be able to go to summarize.tech. I can paste my video and see what happens now. The tomfoolery test video presents a thorough examination of the evolution of mechanical engineering and aviation, emphasizing the complexities of engine designs, including steam engines and various propulsion systems. That's the garbage data. It's only summarizing the garbage text. There is no... Okay, wait, here. We have a slight mention of the Homebrew channel, and then it goes back to the garbage text. Yeah, this is working. This is working great. Crisp YouTube Summarizer. Doesn't Crisp like make a noise cancelling thing? Why are they making YouTube summarizers now? The discussion begins with the necessity of springs behind the delivery path. This one doesn't even try to talk about the Homebrew channel. Sumtube.ai. Let's try this one. The effects of Discord on programmer humor were catastrophic. Oh my god! This is like 136. It is very important here that when the automatic captions get made, we delete them, because we already have our own track, which is the one that's poisoned for AI. If we have the automatic one, then the summarizers are going to default to that one, and therefore this trick won't work. Gemini is actually pretty smart about this. If you ask it to make a summary of a video and the video doesn't have automatic captions enabled, it doesn't even try. When I first came up with this method 1 year ago, I was over the moon. Then I tried opening one of these videos on my phone, and yeah, transparency and position don't really work there. So any reasonable person would just give up. Do I sound like a reasonable person though? Since the problem is that transparency and positioning don't work properly on mobile and they show black squares, I decided to write a Python script that scans the video and finds every instance of a full black frame. So for example, when I fade to black now, there are like 30 subtitles on screen right now, but they are black on black so you can see them. I ended up having a local LLM generate a story that is similar to the real script but with completely made up facts, and also threw that in the out of bounds subtitle text repository, and that ended up working perfectly. I managed to confuse GPT-4o every time it tried to recap my video. So I can confidently say that as of today, 22nd of January 2025, this is a pretty effective way of fighting the most common slop makers. I can't really do a lot about Whisper right now. I have to figure out a way to trigger audio hallucinations without making them obnoxious to humans. Also, bigger and newer models like ChatGPT's O1 are able to sometimes filter the noise and actually understand the real topic of the video. They are able to see that I'm tricking them. However, there would be yet another step that could potentially work by simply filling the memory of any LLM so much, it's simply wasting so many resources it can't do anything about it. And that would be dividing every single sentence in the subtitle file per single letter, specifying the position on screen and the timing. So to a human watching the video, they would see the complete result of like this patchwork, because the player can do it easily as part of the logic that displays the subtitles. But An LLM would have to read every single letter in order, and that's where we pull another trick, because since the player doesn't need the actual subtitles in the text file to be in order, when you're playing the video, the player just loads the entire file in RAM and displays the subtitles according to their timestamp. But we can scramble the order of the letters in the text file, and the video player is gonna be fine because he can just reference the timing. But an LLM has to waste resources reordering every single letter for every sentence, and then from that, it has to piece together the words, which, depending on how the scraping is done, means doing it without having the position data. So it has to play Scrabble for every single word. And eventually, if it can do that correctly, it can theoretically try to summarize something. But yeah, right now it just gives up. It doesn't even try. There is yet another trick. This one works also on Whisper Summarizer sometimes, because it is not exploiting any specific quirk of the tech. It's exploiting the economy behind it. And that is, since running large, good models can be expensive for people running websites like this, it is common for them to use caching. So when you give the AI summarizer a link to a video, it's going to make a summary and then store that summary so that any future person trying to summarize the same video is not going to waste any API credits because they already have the result, it's already done. So my idea to exploit this is we make a video that is twice as long as the real video, and the second part is just us yapping, saying stuff like
Android hell is a real place.
We upload this video to YouTube, and using the YouTube editor, we cut out the real part, only leaving the yapping, and make sure the yapping is the same length as the real part, for reasons you'll figure out soon. Finally, give your video to every video summarizer you can find so that they make a summary of the yapping, and they keep that in cache for the future. When that's done, you go back to the YouTube editor, you revert the changes, and this time you cut out the fake part. You only leave the real part intact. And what you're gonna have now is your copy of the real video on YouTube, and for that link associated with it, fake summaries about your yapping. Having the same length for the yapping part and the real part makes it so that it is more difficult for these websites to figure out that something changed with your video because the length is the same, and so they can just use that to update their cache. So did I just fix this problem once and for all? No, not at all. When I first started working on this thing around 1 year ago, I was aware that the second I made my discoveries public, people working at these tools, which, by the way, they're not to blame, don't hate them. The tools are great. Some people just use them to steal, but they're not meant for that. But yeah, the developers behind these tools are going to fix these issues, so my goal with this video, aside from telling you how cool subtitles are, is not trying to sell you a cure for this problem. Making this video might realistically have just closed some doors for me when it comes to future sponsors that maybe work with AI. But this video isn't about making money or getting recognition, it's about trying to do something about what's going on. Us creators are being attacked by both other creators just stealing our content, so they're not really creators, they're just thieves who don't really care about anything except making money. But most importantly, huge mega corporations are being caught, basically weekly trying to train their product, something they're selling, on our art without any authorization. They're trying to build machines that are meant to replace us, and they are using our passion to fuel this project. And I hate it. I hate it. I'm a nobody. I'm a woman trying to make her living doing what she loves, and I'm not trying to pick a fight or even pretend I have a fighting chance against huge mega corporations that in 1 second make more money than I've ever made in my entire life. So realistically, if they want our data, if they need it, they're going to get it. But what I'm trying to say is that we have to stop being doomers about it, and we don't have to make it easy for them to steal our shit. If I manage to come up with this and I'm just a glorified art graduate, maybe some of you watching right now are going to come up with something that is even more complex and can make it less convenient for people or huge corporations to steal our work without giving us any money, any credits. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And after this video, I have to really hope AI never takes over, or I'm definitely going to Android hell. Nothing to see here, nothing to see here. There are no hidden subtitles here, no.